Welcome to the History Stories podcast. Get ready, because today we're embarking on a truly wild historic road trip, digging into a bizarre tale from the Roman Empire. Forget the usual emperors and battles. We're plunging into the strange world of Caligula and his prized horse, Incitatus.
It's a story that just makes you say, wait, what? But, with this really dark, unsettling undercurrent to it all.
Exactly. Our mission on this historic road trip is to unpack this incredible story using the history books and uncovered sources you've shared.
Right. We want to try and separate what might be fact from, pure fiction, and really understand why this seemingly absurd incident still fascinates us today.
We'll be asking the big WTF happened questions, looking at the context that maybe made it almost believable.
Full moose.
And looking at the lasting impact of a horse who was nearly a Roman consul.
Buckle up. It's definitely going to be a strange ride into the heart of imperial Rome.
Okay, let's unpack this. So Rome, around 40 AD.
Yeah.
You have to picture a city just buzzing with power, with intrigue, and under the absolute control of Emperor Julius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, better known as Caligula.
And he was young, notoriously unpredictable, and basically his word was law, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. And into this scene trots Incitatus. Not a general, not a senator, but Caligula's beloved chariot horse. Probably a magnificent white stallion.
And looking at the history books and these uncovered sources, it's really clear this wasn't just any horse.
Oh, absolutely not. According to the historical accounts, and it's important to remember, many were written after Caligula's, let's say, untimely departure.
A crucial point.
Incitatus lived a life of just unbelievable luxury. I mean, we're talking about a stable built of marble.
A marble stable, and not just any feeding trough, right? It was crafted from ivory.
Ivory. It just paints such a picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
And purple blankets. Purple, that was the color of royalty, reserved for the absolute elite.
And a jeweled collar. It's almost hard to wrap your head around the sheer opulence for a horse.
But hold on, it gets even more surreal. Apparently, Incitatus had his own house.
His own house?
His very own residence, complete with slaves and furniture. Also, he could entertain guests.
Who were supposedly invited in the horse's name.
Right. You can just imagine the bewildered looks on their faces.
Well, what's fascinating when we look at these details from the history books and these sources is the atmosphere they create. It's this, bizarre mix of utter absurdity, a real sense of menace, and this dark, almost comical feel to it. It really just highlights the sheer capriciousness, the whim that comes with absolute power.
And then we get to the big one, the detail that's echoed down through history. Caligula's rumored plan to appoint Incitatus as a consul.
Now, this is a really crucial point to get right as we look at these history books and sources. Incitatus almost certainly never actually held the office of consul.
Right, okay.
The key historical accounts like Suetonius and Cassius Dio, who again wrote later, they say Caligula planned it or promised to do it.
Before he was assassinated in 41 AD.
Exactly. So no hoof prints on official Roman documents as far as we know.
But the very idea of it, the public declaration, or even the rumor of the declaration. That's the real core of this story, isn't it?
Totally. It suggests either, supreme imperial trolling aimed at the highest levels of Roman society, or maybe genuine delusion aimed squarely at that Roman elite he seemed to despise.
Right. To really get the weight of this, we need to think about the Roman political context at the time, which the history books and uncovered sources help clarify.
Yeah, it wasn't just an emperor doing whatever he pleased in a vacuum. There were still structures, even if weakened.
Okay, so while the emperor held immense, almost absolute power, there was still this delicate, often really strained relationship with the Senate.
That traditional body of Roman aristocrats, yeah. And Caligula, well, he had a notoriously terrible relationship with them. The history books are full of examples.
Humiliation, seizing their wealth, just treating them with utter contempt.
His whole drive for absolute kind of godlike authority really clashed with the Senate clinging on to their old Republican ideals, even if those ideals were mostly symbolic by then.
And the consulship itself, even though its actual day-to-day power had lessened under the emperors, it still held huge historical importance and prestige.
It was the absolute pinnacle of a Roman political career, wasn't it? The symbol of the establishment.
Represented the very heart of that Roman establishment. So what were the reactions then, according to these later historians? to this idea of Consul Incitatus?
Well, according to them, the Senate and the aristocracy were just filled with horror. Outrage probably kept very quiet.
Oh, I bet.
And a good amount of sheer terror. This wasn't just some weird quirk.
Well, no.
It was like a declaration that their highest honors, their whole social class, meant absolutely nothing to Caligula.
The implication being, my horse is better than you.
Exactly. Chillingly clear.
And the general populace, what did they think?
That's more uncertain, piecing it together from later accounts in the history books and sources, maybe some dark amusement, maybe fear, or maybe just indifference to the elite's squabbling.
Hard to say for sure.
Very. And then, of course, after Caligula's assassination, historians like Suetonius and Dio really jumped on the Incitatus story.
It became Exhibit A, didn't it?
Pretty much. Prime evidence of Caligula's madness and tyranny, basically justifying why he had to be overthrown.
Which brings us to the big question, looking at these history books and sources. Why? Why would Caligula even think about doing this? What are the main theories?
Okay, theory one. The traditional view, the one you find right there in Suetonius and Dio. Stark raving bad.
Simple enough.
The idea is, he had some illness early in his reign. It changed him, led to cruelty, delusions, megalomania, and the horse thing was just a symptom of him completely losing it.
But, as you said, diagnosing people centuries later.
Exactly. It's really tricky, often too simplistic. And lots of his actions, even the crazy-sounding ones, might have had political angles. Plus, you have to consider the bias of those later historians.
Definitely. Which leads nicely into theory number 2, which seems pretty popular with modern scholars looking back at these sources. Calculated political satire.
Right. This one suggests Caligula wasn't necessarily insane, but actually had a sharp, maybe twisted political mind.
Okay.
He despised the Senate, saw their obsession with titles and honors as empty. So, proposing his horse for consul, it was a deliberate, provocative way to pour scorn on the whole system.
To basically say, this job is so meaningless, even my horse can do it.
Precisely. It fits with his known contempt for the Senate and his love of these, grand theatrical gestures of power that we read about. It's pure autocratic irony.
Okay, then theory 3 takes a more skeptical look at the sources themselves. Gross exaggeration and propaganda.
Yeah, the idea here is maybe the story was just made up, or at least heavily embellished after he was dead. Well, the historians writing then served the interests of the new emperors in the Senate. They had every reason to paint Caligula as a monster, to make themselves look better, to justify the assassination.
So maybe it was just a joke or a passing comment that got blown way out of proportion?
It's plausible, right? Given the clear agendas in some ancient historical writing, the threat might have been real, the insult intended, but maybe the marble stable, the ivory manger, maybe some details got amplified.
Always have to be careful with the sources.
Always.
And theory 4.
Kind of overlaps with satire, maybe. A dark, twisted joke. The watch the world burn theory. Meaning maybe Caligula just got a kick out of the shock and horror. He enjoyed pushing boundaries, showing off his absolute power in the most unsettling ways possible just because he could.
Just pure provocation for its own sake.
Could be. Given what else we read about his cruelty and his sort of performative nature in these sources.
So weighing it all up, what seems most likely?
Probably, yeah. Likely some kind of blend. Maybe a core of that political satire, that deliberate, nasty insult to the Senate, combined with definitely some exaggeration by later historians who had an axe to grind. But the basic idea, suggesting the horse was somehow superior, that feels like a calculated, scathing insult, was probably there.
And this bizarre story, it really stuck around, didn't it? It left a surprisingly lasting legacy, as the history books and sources show.
It really did. Incitatus became this powerful symbol.
For centuries, yeah. A symbol of tyranny, of arbitrary, just degenerate rule. You still hear it today. When a leader seems irrational or contemptuous of institutions, someone will bring up Caligula and his horse.
And it's become a shorthand in political commentary, too, hasn't it? Like, if there's an appointment that seems totally unqualified or just pure cronyism,
someone will say, might as well appoint a horse.
Exactly. It taps right into that Incitatus story.
And it popped up in literature and art, too, right? Works referencing Roman excess or political folly. Didn't Voltaire mention it?
He did, yeah. It became a go-to example.
What's amazing is how it still echoes, even now. You see it referenced online sometimes, in memes or discussions about out-of-touch leaders or just bizarre political moments.
He's become this sort of niche but still potent historical meme in a way.
And ultimately, it's still one of the most famous or infamous stories about Caligula. It often overshadows everything else he did just because it's so uniquely strange.
Guarantees him a spot on every crazy ruler's list forever, basically.
It really shows how these stories, saved in our history books and uncovered sources, don't just fade away. They're kept alive, often as these kinds of cautionary tales, right?
Absolutely. Passed down with this mix of horror and fascination.
Okay, let's dig into some specifics now. Some of the deep cuts, the trivia and details from the history books, and sources that really add color to this.
Good idea. Let's start with the name. Incitatus. What does that mean?
It translates from Latin as something like swift, spurred on, or at full gallop.
Pretty fitting for a champion chariot horse, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And the main source for all the luxury details.
That's Suetonius, his Lives of the 12 Caesars, specifically the Life of Caligula, chapter 55. He's the one who gives us the marble stable, ivory manger, purple blanket, jeweled collar, the house, the slaves, the furniture.
And the plan to make him consul.
And the plan to make him consul. Then you've got Cassius Dio, writing a bit later in his Roman history. He backs up the consul plan, or promise.
Okay.
And he adds that detail about Caligula inviting the horse to dinner and feeding him gilded barley.
Gilded barley.
Yeah.
And Suetonius also mentioned the regular feed included oats mixed with gold flakes.
Yeah. Symbolic, literal, who knows, but it definitely adds to the image of just insane extravagance.
Wow. And Caligula apparently made people swear oaths by Incitatus's safety, alongside his own divinity.
Elevating the horse to this almost holy status. It's bizarre.
But again, critically, no sources from during Caligula's lifetime mention the consul plan, right?
Well, that's a key point skeptics raise, yeah. It really does suggest the story might have grown after he was gone.
And there was maybe another rumor mixed in about making him a priest.
Dio mentions that too, yeah. A plan to make Incitatus a priest, possibly to Caligula himself, since Caligula had declared himself a god. Maybe it was a separate rumor, maybe they got mixed up over time.
And before all this political drama, Incitatus was actually a winner, a successful racer.
Apparently so. Caligula was obsessed with chariot racing, especially the green faction Incitatus likely raced for.
And he demanded silence near the stable before races.
That's right. Suetonius reports soldiers were ordered to enforce quiet near Incitatus' stable the night before a race. Total silence.
Just imagine living nearby. Shh. The emperor's horse needs his sleep.
Crazy. Utterly crazy.
So there you have it, our historic road trip through the peculiar world of Caligula and Incitatus, drawing on these history books and uncovered sources. We've seen how a pampered horse and a rumored political appointment became this incredibly potent story.
Yeah, revealing so much about power, about satire, maybe propaganda, and just how history gets written and remembered.
This tale, it's undeniably bizarre, but it really does offer a fascinating way to think about rulers and the ruled the power symbols have.
And how stories themselves shape our understanding of the past.
We hope this historic road trip, guided by these history books and sources, has sparked your curiosity. What aspects of this story really stand out most to you? Does it make you look at other historical accounts maybe a bit differently?
And for anyone who wants to dig even deeper, we've put some starting points in our show notes. You'll find links to the primary sources like Suetonius and Cassius Dio, some good history websites, and even some pointers towards modern scholarly discussions on this whole bizarre episode.
So as you go about your week, maybe think about this. What are the Incitatus moments you see around you? You know, those times when something seems so absurd or an appointment so unqualified that it just makes you pause.
Might offer a surprising link between ancient Rome and today.
It just might. Join us next time on the History Stories podcast for another captivating journey into the past.